Welcome to Somatic Shadow Work for Sleep, a meditation series that recalibrates the thoughts, actions, and habits that govern your daily life. Your guide in these meditations is Seth Cherepak, author of Awaken Your Shadow and founder of somatic axiology. These meditations speak to your dominant form of intelligence, known by cognitive neuroscience as value intelligence. Value intelligence, or VQ, operates upstream of your intellectual intelligence, IQ, and your emotional intelligence, EQ. VQ is the decentralized intelligence sprawling throughout your entire being, like an underground root system feeding every branch above it and the fruit it bears. VQ is the silent architect of the thoughts, decisions, and actions that seem to be under your conscious control until they're tested by the pressures, challenges, and opportunities of your daily life. This is how somatic axiology succeeds in delivering on the promises made by the schools of New Age energy healing, EFT, breathwork, chakra work, sound healing, which address mainly only your EQ, and the school of conventional methods, NLP, positive affirmations, and mindset programs, which address mainly your IQ. Somatic axiology speaks to your VQ, quietly and intentionally transforming the subconscious signal that governs them both, so your thoughts grow clearer and your feelings steadier. Listen to this in a place where your attention is free to shift from the worries and cares of the external world into the rich architecture of your internal world, where your transformation begins. In this episode, Activating Your Transcendent Self, Seth guides you on a journey into the part of you that learned to judge itself, to demand perfection, and to wage a quiet war against its own humanity. This is your first step toward inner peace, instead of a ceasefire you have to enforce.
We will begin our journey with 4 deep breaths. Breathe in quickly, feeling your belly expand. Hold as your body begins to relax and your mind begins its descent. Breathe out, feeling your body relax and your mind descending deeper. Breathe in again, feeling your belly expand more and more, and hold. Breathe out slowly as your body relaxes more and more and your mind descends deeper and deeper. Breathe in again, your belly expanding more and more and more. Hold. Now begin the slow release, your body relaxing more and more, your mind descending deeper and deeper and deeper. Breathe in a final time, your belly expanding fully. Hold. Now breathe slowly out, your body relaxing completely, your mind descending deeper and deeper and deeper, all the way to the deepest part, the part beyond your thoughts, beyond your feelings, and beyond your conscious reach. You are now completely relaxed and at peace. It's late, and by every external measure you have done the work. You have read the books. You have done the practices. You have sat the retreats. You have prayed the prayers. You have studied the masters. You have shaped yourself year by year into the kind of man who, by all visible signs, should be at peace. And you are lying here in the dark, and you are not at peace. This is not self-help. This is somatic shadow work. Not another spiritual practice to add to your stack. Not another framework for higher consciousness. Not another teaching to absorb on top of the dozen you have already mastered. Somatic shadow work is the descent beneath the spiritual identity, into the body of a man who has been using transcendence to avoid the very wounds his soul was asking him to feel. So let us go there slowly, carefully, because this is the most subtle of all the rooms, and the man who lives in this room is the hardest to reach, not because he is closed. He is, in fact, the most open man in the castle. He is hard to reach because he has built his entire identity on a kind of openness that has been quietly working against him for years. Notice your body right now, not the parts you usually notice when you meditate, not the breath in the nostrils, not the rising and falling of the chest, not the spaciousness behind the eyes, not the calm you have practiced finding for years. The other parts, the parts the practice has been quietly stepping over for a long time. Feel your jaw. Underneath the calm face you have learned to keep on the front of your head. There is a tightness there you have spent years learning not to notice. A small held clench. A discipline of the muscle that you have come to associate with composure. A particular shape your jaw has been holding while you taught yourself to be the calm one. Now your shoulders, that faint upward tension in the trapezius muscles, the micro-lift you have not actually let down. You have meditated on top of this lift for years. You have prayed on top of it. You have practiced acceptance on top of it. You have surrendered on top of it. But the lift is still there, because the lift is not a thought. The lift is a body holding something the mind has refused to feel. Now your gut, that low, faint tightness underneath everything you have learned about presence, a small, persistent clutch in the belly, a subtle gripping that does not match the language you have been speaking about your own inner life. You are supposed to be at peace. You have done the practices that should have brought peace. You have invested years. You have built an identity, and the gut, when you actually drop into it tonight, is not at peace. This is the body's report, which the spiritual identity has been refusing to read. For a long time. Now your chest. Beneath the spaciousness you have learned to access on the in-breath. Underneath the cathedral your meditation has built between the ribs. There is a small hard place. A density. A tight little knot of unfinished grief. A piece of unmetabolized anger, a specific located ache the practice has been gracefully bypassing every time you arrived at it. You have prayed over this knot. You have breathed light into this knot. You have visualized this knot dissolving. You have invoked grace over this knot. You have surrendered this knot to a higher power. And the knot is still there because the knot was not asking to be transcended. The knot was asking to be felt. And the difference between those two things is the entire subject of this episode. You are a sophisticated practitioner. You know things about the human soul that most men in your generation do not know. You have language for states of being that most people cannot even locate inside themselves. You have read the contemplatives. You have read the mystics. You have read the modern teachers, the ancient ones, the saints, the sages. You can speak fluently about presence, about surrender, about awakening, about grace, about the false self, about the ego, about death and rebirth, about the dark night, about non-attachment, about the witnessing consciousness. And the world has rewarded you for this fluency. People come to you for clarity. People come to you for steadiness. People come to you because you seem, in their estimation, to have figured something out. And you have partly. That is what makes this hard. This is not about a fake spiritual man. You are not a fraud. You have had real openings. You have had genuine moments of contact with the deeper layers of the self. You have known stillness. You have known surrender. You have known something that, for lack of a better word, you would call God. Those experiences were not fictional. They happened. But here is what no one in your spiritual community has said out loud. A man can have real openings and still use them to avoid the rest of his life. A man can be genuinely connected to a deeper consciousness and still be running from a buried grief that wanted his attention more than the transcendent state ever did. A man can be authentically humble in his practice, and at the same time, in another part of the same body, be quietly arrogant about his progress in a way he has never let himself examine. The transcendent self in shadow is not the fake spiritual man. The fake spiritual man is easy to see. The transcendent self in shadow is the real one. The one who has been doing the work. The one who has actually grown. The one whose practice has produced visible fruit. And who has, without knowing it, used the growth itself to skip over the parts of his humanity he did not want to feel. This is the most subtle counterfeit in the castle, because it does not look like a counterfeit. It looks like wisdom. It looks like equanimity. It looks like the mature spiritual life of a man who has done his inner work. And buried underneath that appearance is a small, ordinary, unfinished man who has been quietly starving while the spiritual one was being celebrated. Watch how this shows up tonight. Notice what your mind has been doing as you listen to me. Part of you has been receiving the words, and part of you has been reviewing them, evaluating them, comparing them to the teachings you already know, filing them under the appropriate frameworks, quietly noticing where I might be wrong or where this might be a simpler version of something more sophisticated you have already learned. That review is not curiosity. That review is a small, quiet defense, a way of staying slightly above the material, a way of receiving the teaching without being inside it, a way of maintaining the position of the practitioner while never quite letting yourself be the subject. You do this with most spiritual material now. You do this with sermons. You do this with retreats. You do this with the teachers you read. You stay a little above it. You evaluate it. You appreciate it. You file what is useful. You discard what is not. And you never quite let any of it land in the gut. The knot in your chest knows the difference. The knot has been listening for years. Listening for the moment a teaching would arrive that the mind could not file before the body received it. And the knot has been waiting because the mind has gotten very good at intercepting. This is the great quiet diagnostic of the transcendent self in shadow. He has built a sophisticated mind that intercepts spiritual material before it can reach the body and metabolizes it at the level of the framework. He calls this discernment. The witness calls it something else. Insulation. A man with a thick layer of spiritual concept around an unmet, unfelt, ordinary human life. And the layer keeps getting thicker. Every retreat, every book, every teaching he absorbs, and the ordinary life underneath keeps getting more starved for actual contact. Now notice something else. Your relationships. The people closest to you. You love them. You do. But when they bring you a problem, a grief, a fear, an anger, notice what your body does. It does not lean in. It rises slightly above. It moves into the position of the calm observer, the wise one, the one who has perspective, the one who can hold space. And you offer them, with genuine warmth, a slightly elevated version of what they brought. A teaching, a reframe, a larger context, an invitation to see this through a wider lens. You think you are loving them, and in one sense you are. But notice what you are not doing. You are not feeling what they are feeling. You are above it. You are observing it. You are helping them transcend it. And they have begun over the years to stop bringing you the rawest things, because they cannot get a human response from you. They can only get a wise one. And wise, while admirable, is not what they came to you for. This is the great unspoken loneliness of the spouse, the friend, the child of the transcendent self in shadow. They live with a man who is always one level above their grief. And no matter how much they appreciate his wisdom, something in them is quietly starving for the man who would simply weep with them, or rage with them, or be confused with them, or sit in the actual mud of the actual moment with them, instead of helping them out of the mud and into a more spacious view. And in the deepest part of you, you have known this. You have noticed the strange, low ache of being admired but not fully met. You have noticed the way intimacy seems to plateau somewhere just below where you wish it would go. You have noticed that you, despite all your practices, are sometimes the loneliest man in the room. And the spiritual frameworks have offered you explanations for this. The ones that are about other people. Most people are not at your level of development. Most people are still identified with the small self. Most people cannot meet you where you are because they have not done their own work. And there is some truth in those frameworks. There is also a quieter, more disturbing truth your gut has been holding for a long time. The loneliness is not because they cannot reach you. It is because you have used the practices to make yourself unreachable. This is the most uncomfortable line in the entire castle. And tonight it is finally close enough to be said. You are lonely because the transcendent identity you built keeps you elevated above the very intimacy you say you long for. And the practices you have used to grow have also been the practices that helped you avoid coming down. Stay there for a moment. Do not bypass this. Do not reach for the framework that would help you transcend the discomfort of what I just said. Notice the mind doing exactly that. Notice it offering you, even now, a more spacious view from which this discomfort can be observed without being inhabited. That is the move. That is the move the transcendent self in shadow makes 1,000 times a day. The slight ascent, the small rise above, the smooth automatic shift from inside the experience to slightly above the experience, where it can be witnessed instead of felt. And you have made this move so many times that you do not even feel it anymore. It is just the shape of your consciousness, slightly above your own life. Tonight we are going to do something almost no spiritual teacher will ask you to do. We are going to come back down, not into ego, not into smallness, not into the contracted self the practice has been helping you outgrow, down into the ordinary body, the body that holds the jaw, the body that holds the shoulder lift, the body that carries the knot in the chest, the body that has the gut tightness underneath all the practiced peace, the ordinary mortal unfinished body that has been waiting for the practitioner to finally come home to it. And in this body, there is a small boy. He is not the false self. He is not the ego. He is not the contracted identity the teachings warned you about. He is something simpler and much harder to admit. He is the boy who learned very early that ordinary humanness was unacceptable, that his mistakes were unsafe, that his messiness was a problem. That love would only flow if he could perform a kind of purity that no human being is actually capable of sustaining. And he has been carrying that contract ever since into your spiritual life, into your relationships, into the way you hold your own body even in sleep. And every retreat, every practice, every framework you have absorbed has been quietly bent into the service of that same contract. Be good enough, be pure enough, be elevated enough, be wise enough, be transcendent enough, that you finally get to stop being ordinary. Tonight, in the honest dark, we are going to walk back into the room where that boy is hiding, and we are going to find out what he was promised. The day he first decided that being human was not enough, and why holiness for him has always meant the careful, lifelong escape from his own ordinary heart. So let us go back. Back before the practices, back before the retreats, back before the carefully constructed inner life of a man who has been doing the work for 20 or 30 years, back to the boy you used to be. Because the knot in your chest tonight was tied a very long time ago by a small body that came to a very specific conclusion about what kind of human was allowed to be loved. Picture him, the boy version of you, and notice something specific about him. He was ordinary. That word will land harder than you expect. He was ordinary. He was a small animal in a human body. He had appetites. He had angers. He had moods. He had a stomach that growled at inconvenient times. He had a body that smelled the way small bodies smell. He had questions that were not polite. He had wants that were not virtuous. He had a small, dirty, unformed humanness that every boy in every century has had. He was, in every way that the deepest traditions know the word, human. And the world he entered did not respond to that humanness with calm. The world he entered held standards, maybe religious standards, maybe moral standards, maybe family standards, maybe cultural standards, maybe the unspoken standards of a parent who was disappointed in himself and projected that disappointment onto a small boy. The exact shape varied, but the underlying message was the same. Your ordinary humanness is not acceptable here. You must be better, cleaner, quieter, more controlled, more careful, less appetitive, less angry, less curious about the wrong things, less interested in the parts of life the adults around you found inconvenient. You must, in a word, be good, and not in the way real goodness is born, not in the slow, organic way a child grows into virtue over decades. You must be good now. At 6, at 7, at 8, at an age when no human being has the developmental capacity to be what is being demanded of him. And so the boy was given an impossible standard and watched year after year as he failed to meet it. Not because he was bad, because he was a human child, and the standard had been written for someone who did not actually exist. But the boy did not know that. The boy assumed the standard was reasonable, and that his failure to meet it was evidence of something wrong with him. Maybe the standard came through a church that spoke about purity, about sin, about righteousness, about the kind of boy God wanted him to be. And he heard those words through the ears of a small body that did not yet know how to separate the love of God from the disappointment of the human being standing between him and that love. He absorbed both at the same time, and in the body of a small boy they fused. God's love became something that depended on his behavior. Belonging became something that had to be earned by approximating a standard he could not actually meet. And every ordinary human moment, the lust that came too early, the anger that flared at the unfair adult, the curiosity about the body, the boredom in the long sermon, the secret pleasure in a small disobedience, became evidence of a fundamental wrongness that he would have to spend his life correcting. Maybe the standard did not come through a church. Maybe it came through a high-performing family, a family that valued excellence, a family where the floor for acceptable behavior was higher than any small body could sustain. And every fall short of that floor was met not with cruelty necessarily, but with disappointment. A specific kind of disappointment that small bodies feel as something close to annihilation. The cool look, the withdrawn warmth, the faint sigh, the careful measured tone that signaled without words, "You were better than this." And he heard beneath those words the deeper message. The ordinary version of you is unacceptable. The exceptional version is the one we love. Be the exceptional version always. Or maybe the standard did not come through religion or family at all. Maybe it came through trauma. Maybe the boy lived in a household where ordinary humanness was punished violently, where messiness produced blows, where need produced shame, where the small, ordinary parts of being a child were beaten out of him under the language of discipline. And he learned in his body that being human was dangerous, that the body itself was the problem, that if he could rise out of it, if he could become someone purer than ordinary humans, if he could be the kind of boy who did not have the wrong wants, the wrong fears, the wrong needs, he could be safe. The specific source varies from boy to boy, but the conclusion is the same, and it lands in the body the same way. Ordinary humanness is unsafe. Therefore, I must become extraordinary in order to be loved. Therefore, I must rise above my own animal nature. Therefore, I must master myself. Therefore, I must be holy, or pure, or evolved, or disciplined, or whatever word the boy's particular culture used for being above the merely human. This is the Perfectionist Contract. The contract that says, I will not be loved as a man. I will only be loved as a transcendence of a man. Therefore, I will dedicate my life to becoming the transcendence and burying the man. The boy signs this contract in his body, not in his head. In the body, every time he suppresses an ordinary feeling to perform a higher one. Every time he forces himself toward composure when grief was the truth. Every time he calls his anger sin instead of information. Every time he prays away a longing that needed to be honored, not banished. Every time he chooses the version of himself the adults will call good, over the version that was actually alive in the room, and he gets very good at it. This is the great irony of the Transcendent Self in shadow. He has real spiritual gifts. He has a real capacity for stillness, a real openness to the deeper layers of life, a real ability to perceive the patterns underneath the ordinary surface of things. But the gifts in shadow did not develop in service of his wholeness. They developed in service of his escape, and every gift he had, he bent toward the contract. His sensitivity to suffering became a way to stay above it instead of inside it. His perception of patterns became a way to intellectualize his own pain instead of feeling it. His capacity for stillness became a way to dissociate from the body rather than inhabit it. His openness to the divine became a way to escape the ordinary human that the divine was actually asking him to be. The gift was real. The use of the gift was conscripted, and the boy carried this conscripted gift into adolescence, and then into adulthood, and the spiritual world welcomed him with open arms. Because the spiritual world, in many of its modern forms, is one of the most effective machines ever built for reinforcing the perfectionist contract. Not the deepest traditions, not the real masters, the watered-down versions, the therapeutic spirituality, the self-improvement masquerading as awakening, The growth industry packaging of ancient teachings into something that flatters the very ego the teachings were supposed to dissolve. These traditions handed him exactly what he was already looking for: a way to climb above his own humanity, dressed up in the most beautiful, ancient, respected language imaginable. Now his anger was not anger. It was a lower vibration to be transmuted. Now his grief was not grief. It was an attachment to be released. Now his loneliness was not loneliness. It was an opportunity for deeper communion with the divine. Now his sexual hunger was not sexual hunger. It was a misdirected longing for union with the One. Now his fear was not fear. It was an illusion of the small self to be witnessed from the larger awareness. And he absorbed all of these reframes, and from the outside his growth looked dramatic. He really did become calmer. He really did become wiser. He really did become more present. He really did experience states most people never touch. But underneath the growth, the old contract was being honored at a higher and higher level of sophistication. The boy was still being told that his ordinary humanness was unacceptable. The boy was still being told that he had to rise above it to be loved. The boy was still being told that the body, the emotion, the appetite, the messy animal life were obstacles to the real self. And the boy, year by year, climbed higher. And every step of the climb, he became more distant from the small, ordinary, mortal heart that was supposed to be his actual home. This is the deepest perversion of the spiritual path, and it is also the most invisible because it does not look like a perversion. It looks like growth. It looks like mastery. It looks like the very thing a young seeker is supposed to be aiming at. And in the deepest traditions, the great teachers always warned about this. They had names for it. Spiritual pride, the trap of the higher self, mistaking the experience of God for being God, using grace to escape what grace was meant to inhabit. The Christian mystics warned about it. The Desert Fathers warned about it. Saint John of the Cross warned about it under the name of spiritual gluttony. The Buddhist masters warned about it. The Sufis warned about it. The serious teachers in every tradition that has ever existed warned about it. The young seeker, given a real opening, would mistake the opening for a finished destination, and would build his entire identity on the elevation it produced, and would never come back down into the very life the opening was supposed to transform. And the masters had a name for this kind of soul. They called it dangerous. Not because the seeker was malicious, because the seeker had constructed a spiritual identity on top of an unmet ordinary life that would eventually have to collapse. And the collapse, when it came, would be brutal. Tonight we are going to try to prevent that collapse by doing the harder, slower, less photogenic work, by coming back down. But before we can come down, the boy has to be acknowledged. The boy who signed the contract, the boy who decided that his ordinary humanness was unacceptable, the boy who has spent his whole life trying to climb out of his own animal body, the boy who has used the language of light to bury the parts of himself that needed to be embraced, not transcended, he is still in there. He is the one carrying the knot in the chest. He is the one with the small, persistent ache in the gut that the practice has been stepping over for years. He is the one whose ordinary, messy, hungry, angry, grieving, longing, wanting, frightened humanness has been quietly waiting to be told the news that the great teachers always knew, but that the contract never let you hear. The news that the divine the boy was reaching for was never asking him to leave his humanness behind. The divine was asking him to bring it, all of it, the hungry parts, the angry parts, the lustful parts, the grief-stricken parts, the afraid parts, the parts that fall short of every standard the world ever wrote. The boy was told all those years ago that he had to leave them behind to be loved. He was told a lie. And the lie has been running his spiritual life for decades. The real invitation, the one underneath every great tradition, was never to escape his humanness. The real invitation was to be loved inside it. Wholly, ordinarily, as the small, mortal, unfinished animal he has always been, inside the larger life that has been holding him all along. And tonight, in the honest dark, that boy is finally close enough to the surface to hear the news. So come back to now. Back to the man in the dark room. Back to the bed. Back to the body still holding the knot the boy first tied when he learned that ordinary humanness was unsafe. Because the boy who signed the Perfectionist Contract grew up. He left the church pew. He left the high-performing family. He left the house where his ordinary humanness was first refused. He built a life of his own, a spiritual one, a serious one, a life that has, by every external indicator, been a long-sustained climb upward. And he carried the contract with him into every retreat, every practice, every prayer, every framework. And tonight, we are going to look at exactly what that contract has cost him. Not in terms most spiritual communities would name out loud. In terms his own body has been quietly recording for decades. Start with the most uncomfortable one. His marriage, or his closest love, whatever shape it takes. Look at the woman who shares your bed, or has shared it, or wanted to share it before the distance became too much. There is a strange grief in her, isn't there? She has never quite been able to name it. She tries. She says things like, "You are not really here. You are not really here with me. You are kind, you are wise, you are patient, you are present in some abstract sense, but you are not really here, and you have not known what she meant. You have meditated more, you have practiced more presence. You have shown up with more openness, more space, more equanimity, and the grief in her has not lifted. If anything, it has deepened, because she is not asking for more equanimity. She is asking for a man, an ordinary one, a flawed one, a messy, frightened, hungry, sometimes angry, sometimes lonely, sometimes lost human being who can be in the room with her at the level she is actually living at. She does not need you to hold space for her. She needs you to be in the space with her. And there is a difference. And the difference has been the quiet, persistent ache of her life with you. When she cries, you do not cry. You sit with her tears. You witness her tears. You hold a calm, loving field around her tears. And she is not actually receiving comfort from any of that, because the comfort she needs is to see her tears reflected in your own face, to know that the man she loves is moved by what she is moved by, that he is not above the grief, that he is not transmuting the grief, that he is not in the same moment observing the grief and her with a serene awareness. She needs you to be human with her, and the perfectionist contract has been holding you one full step above her humanness for the entire duration of your marriage. This is what spiritual bypassing actually costs. Not the embarrassment of using cosmic words for ordinary feelings, the slow, decades-long starvation of the person who loves you. She has been waiting for the man to come down out of the temple, and the man has been refusing to leave the altar because the boy in the contract was promised that the altar was the only safe place for him. Now look at your anger. This one will be harder to admit, because the spiritual identity has assured you for years that you have done significant work on your anger. And in one sense you no longer rage. You no longer shout. You no longer throw things or break things or punish people with cold silences. You have learned through long practice to keep the surface calm. And from the outside, this looks like growth. But notice what the body is doing under the calm surface. There is a small, persistent heat in your chest. You have come to call this heat by spiritual names: the fire of devotion, the heat of transformation, the intensity of the path. But you know in the honest dark that the heat has a different name underneath the spiritual one. It is anger, old anger, unmetabolized anger, anger at the parent who set the impossible standard, anger at the church that taught you the wrong things about your own body, anger at the early adults who could not love the ordinary boy, anger at the world for being the way it is, anger at God for not arriving the way you had hoped, anger at yourself for falling short of a standard no human has ever met. And every one of those angers was real. Every one of them was legitimate. Every one of them was a signal from a part of you that needed acknowledgement. And every one of them was suppressed in the name of spiritual maturity. Suppressed. Not transformed. Not integrated. Not honored. Suppressed. Because the contract told you for 40 years that anger was a lower vibration. That anger was a sign of unenlightened consciousness. That anger was something the truly evolved man had moved beyond. So you moved beyond it, and the anger went underground. And underground it did not dissolve. Underground it became something more dangerous. A low, steady pressure beneath the spiritual identity, a subtle bitterness that occasionally leaks out as condescension toward people less evolved than you. A faint, refined contempt for those who have not done their inner work. A specific tone you use when discussing the unenlightened that the people closest to you have learned to recognize. This is the spiritualized version of the leak. The buried anger comes out sideways. Not as the raw aggression the contract forbade, but as something the contract permitted, a quiet superiority dressed up as compassion, a subtle disdain wearing the costume of teaching, a correction offered with such loving language that the person on the receiving end cannot quite name why they feel small afterward. And you have done this for years, and you have never been able to see it. Because the framework that produced the behavior has also produced the lens through which you evaluate the behavior. You have used the very identity that caused the leak to assess whether the leak is happening, and the identity, of course, returns the verdict the identity wants. You are calm, you are wise, you are loving, you have done the work. Meanwhile, the body has been recording the truth for decades. The body is the one who knows about the anger underneath the spiritual identity. And the body is the one who keeps producing the symptoms. The chronic tension in the jaw, the persistent tightness across the shoulders, the strange low-grade exhaustion that no amount of spiritual practice resolves, the intermittent flares of irritation that arrive at people who do not deserve them, the sleep that breaks at 3 a.m. for no reason the practice can explain. The body is filing the receipts, and the body has been waiting for the practitioner to read them. Now look at your grief. This is the deepest cost, because the transcendent self in shadow has not grieved. Not really, not all the way down. There have been losses. A parent who died, a friendship that ended, a dream that did not arrive, a version of yourself that had to be set aside, the slow, ordinary disappointments that accumulate in any life. And you have processed all of them. Processed. That is the word you have used. You have processed the grief. You have moved through it with a beautiful, calm, conscious presence. You have held it in awareness. You have honored its place in your evolution. You have noted what it was teaching you. You have allowed it to deepen your compassion. And not one of those losses has actually made it through the body, because to grieve in the way the body actually needs to grieve, you would have to forget for an hour that you are a practitioner. You would have to abandon the awareness. You would have to abandon the framework. You would have to let the floor of your spiritual identity drop out from under you, and you would have to lie on the ground and weep like an ordinary animal who has lost something it loved. No witnessing consciousness, no spacious awareness, no tracking of what the grief is teaching, no higher view from which to observe the weeping. Just an ordinary mortal man sobbing. That is what real grief looks like. And you have not done that in a long time, maybe ever, because the contract never allowed it. The contract said that real spiritual men grieve from above. The contract said the real seeker holds the loss in awareness. The contract said that prolonged grief was a sign of attachment to be released. And so the losses you have suffered, the ones that should have broken you open in a way only ordinary humans can be broken open, were intercepted by the framework before they could reach the body, and they are still in there, every one of them held in suspension, stored in the chest, stored in the gut, stored in the small dense knot the body has been pointing at for decades. The knot is not a chakra blockage. The knot is not an energetic imbalance. The knot is not karmic residue. The knot is grief, a specific kind of grief. The grief of every loss the practitioner intercepted before it could land. And the grief has been waiting patiently for the practitioner to put the framework down and let it move through him the way it was always supposed to. Now look at your relationship with your body. This is the layer beneath all the others. You have a complicated relationship with your body. You manage it. You optimize it. You discipline it. You feed it carefully. You exercise it in spiritually approved ways. You handle its appetites with vigilance, but you do not love it. Not the way a man loves something he has come home to. You love it the way a careful operator loves an instrument. And the body knows. The body has known its whole life that you have been waiting to graduate out of it. The body has known that you have been treating it as a vehicle for the real work rather than the location of it. The body has known that your highest moments are always the ones in which it gets to feel less. Less hunger, less appetite, less weight, less density, less of itself, and the body, despite carrying you for 50 or 60 years, has never been told that it was loved as itself. Just an animal body, hungry, tired, mortal, ordinary, decaying, beautiful, loved as the actual thing it is, not as the vehicle for transcendence, not as the temple in which higher experiences occur, not as the discipline through which spiritual progress is measured. The body itself, loved. And here is the great theological inversion the contract has hidden from you. The body was never the obstacle. The body was the destination. Every real tradition, when you read it carefully, has said this. The incarnation is the doctrine. The Word became flesh. Not the flesh became Word. Not the body left behind to access the Word arriving in the body, and the boy was told the opposite. The boy was told that the body was the lower thing, that the spirit was the higher thing. That holiness was a movement away from the body toward the spirit, and he believed it. And he has spent 40 years climbing in the wrong direction. Holiness is not above the body. Holiness comes down into the body. Wholeness, the word the boy was actually looking for, contains all of him. The animal, the ordinary, the hungry, the angry, the grieving, the longing, the wanting, the afraid. Holiness without wholeness is the great counterfeit. Holiness without wholeness is what the contract has been producing for 40 years. And the great traditions had a name for this counterfeit too. The Pharisee, the man whose external life is impeccable, the man whose religious practice is unimpeachable, the man whose visible holiness has been built on the careful suppression of the very inner life God was actually asking him to bring. The Pharisee is not a fake. The Pharisee is a real practitioner who has substituted appearance for substance, a man who has used the language of holiness to escape the work of wholeness, a man who has built a beautiful religious life on top of an unmet ordinary one. And the great teachers of every tradition have said the same thing about him. The Pharisee is closer to collapse than the ordinary sinner, because the ordinary sinner knows he is unfinished. The Pharisee thinks he is finished, and it is the thinking he is finished that prevents the actual work from ever being done. The boy in the basement in this room is not the false self the spiritual traditions warn about. The boy in the basement is the ordinary humanness the spiritual traditions were always trying to redeem. And the contract has kept him locked away, while the practitioner upstairs has been performing the redemption on his behalf, without ever introducing him to the love that was supposed to find him. He is still down there tonight. the ordinary boy. He is hungry in the ways the contract called impure. He is angry in the ways the contract called unenlightened. He is afraid in the ways the contract called illusory. He is grieving in the ways the contract called attachment. He is wanting in the ways the contract called lower self. He is everything the contract told you to leave behind. And he is everything God has actually been waiting to love. The whole time you were climbing up, the love you were climbing toward was waiting downstairs, in the basement, with the boy. And tonight, in the honest dark, the practitioner has finally gotten quiet enough to hear what the boy has been trying to say for 40 years. Come down. Come all the way down. I have been here the whole time, so let us begin the work. Not the thinking, the work. Because the witness has shown you the contract. The witness has shown you the boy who learned that ordinary humanness was unsafe. The witness has shown you the spiritual identity you built on top of a hungry, unmet, ordinary heart. And seeing is not enough. You have seen yourself before. You have read the books on integration. You have studied the contemplatives who warned about exactly this. You have absorbed the frameworks for embodiment, and the knot in your chest did not dissolve, because the perfectionist contract was not signed in your mind. It was signed in your body, in the jaw that learned to hold the calm, in the shoulders that learned the small upward lift of vigilance dressed as composure, in the gut that learned to stay tight beneath the practiced peace, in the chest that learned to file every grief, every anger, every appetite under the more spiritual name. And a contract signed in the body can only be rewritten in the body. So tonight we are not going to add another spiritual practice to your stack. We are going to perform an initiation, the most counterintuitive one in the castle, because for every other room the work has been climbing. The passive man had to step into his own no. The codependent man had to step into his own boundary. The insecure man had to step into his own ground. The reckless man had to step into his own road. The confused man had to step into his own knowing. The charismatic man had to step into his own real face. For you, the work is the opposite. You have climbed enough. The work for the transcendent self in shadow is to come down, all the way down, into the body the contract has been treating as a vehicle, into the emotion the contract has been treating as a lower vibration, into the ordinary humanness the contract has been treating as a problem to be solved. And the protocol has 3 movements. The first is called naming the ordinary feeling. The second is called coming back into the body. The third is called letting love reach the boy. Each one is a small somatic act that begins to dismantle the climb, without destroying the genuine openings the climb produced. Start with the first. naming the ordinary feeling. For 30 years, you have been translating ordinary feelings into spiritual frameworks the moment they arrive. Tomorrow you are going to stop for just 1 week. You are going to feel what you feel, and you are going to name it in the language of the body, not in the language of the practice. When you feel angry, you are going to say, I am angry. Not, I am noticing the arising of anger in awareness. Not, the lower vibration of frustration is moving through me. Not, there is some anger happening here. I am angry. A man. Angry. About a specific thing that happened to a specific person, namely you. When you feel grief, you are going to say, I am sad. Not the sadness is being witnessed. Not this is the impermanent nature of attachment. Not grief is moving through the field of awareness. I am sad. About this, about her, about what happened, about what I lost, about what is not going to come back. When you feel afraid, you are going to say, I am afraid. Not fear is arising. Not the small self is contracting. Not the illusion of separation is producing a fear response. I am afraid. A man. Afraid. Of something real that deserves to be feared. Or perhaps does not. But the fear is mine, and the fear is here, and the fear has a name in the language of an ordinary heart. When you feel lonely, you are going to say, I am lonely. Not I am experiencing the existential aloneness of being. Not separation is an illusion my deeper awareness is moving through. Not this is a sacred invitation to deeper communion with the divine. I am lonely. For her. For him. For a friend I have lost. For a connection I cannot find. For the simple fact of being human and wanting another human to actually see me. This is the first movement. Naming the ordinary feeling in ordinary language. And it is going to be much harder than it sounds, because the framework will fight for its life. The framework will say that the ordinary language is regression, that you are dropping back into the small self, that you have already moved beyond this level of identification, that this practice is beneath you. Notice the voice that says that. Notice how spiritual it sounds. That voice is not your wisdom. That voice is the contract, defending itself. In the most refined vocabulary it knows. And every time you choose the ordinary word over the spiritual one, the contract weakens. Because the ordinary word lets the feeling land in the body, and the spiritual word, in shadow, was always a way to intercept the feeling before it could land. Now the second movement, coming back into the body, You are going to take 5 minutes a day, only 5. And in those 5 minutes, you are not going to meditate. You are not going to follow the breath. You are not going to scan the chakras. You are not going to invoke the witness consciousness. You are not going to track the rising and falling of phenomena. You are going to do something the practice has been quietly forbidden for decades. You are going to inhabit the body without ascending out of it. Put your hand on your chest, not in the meditative way, the way a frightened man puts his hand on his chest when he does not know what else to do, and feel the actual physical mass of your body, the weight of your bones, the heat of your skin, the animal density of the creature you are. You are an animal. This is the line the practice has been refusing. You are an animal. A specific kind. A mammal. A vertebrate. A two-legged creature with a heart that has been beating since before you were born and will stop beating before you are ready. You are not primarily awareness. You are not primarily consciousness. You are not primarily the witness. You are an animal who is aware, and the awareness lives inside the animal. The animal does not live inside the awareness. This inversion is the entire work. For 30 years, the practice has taught you that the awareness was the real you, and the animal was the temporary vehicle. The truth is the opposite. The animal is the actual you. The awareness is one of the gifts the animal carries. And tonight, in your 5-minute practice, you are going to feel the animal that is hungry, the animal that is tired, the animal that is afraid, the animal that wants to be held, the animal that is lonely tonight, the animal that is going to die one day, the animal that is, despite all the practice, still mortal, still ordinary, still unfinished, still here. And the animal does not need to be transcended. The animal needs to be inhabited. This is the most radical thing the great contemplatives ever said. The flesh is not the obstacle. The flesh is the place where the work actually happens. The word becomes flesh. Not the flesh becomes word. The divine arrives in the body, not out of it. And every minute you spend inhabiting the body without ascending out of it, you are walking the actual path the contract told you was beneath you. Now the third movement, letting love reach the boy. This is the deepest of the three, and it is also the simplest. You are going to do something the practice never let you do. You are going to speak to the boy in the basement, not from the witness consciousness, not from spacious awareness, not from the higher self, from the ordinary man you are. You are going to find him in the chest. The knot the hard, dense, located ache the practice has been bypassing. Put your hand on it, and you are going to say to him in your own ordinary voice the words that were never said. You are not too much. You are not too messy. You are not too hungry. You are not too angry. You are not too needy. You are not too ordinary. You are not the obstacle. You were never the obstacle. You are the one God has been waiting to love. The whole time, I have been climbing past you for 40 years to get to a love that was always here, with you, in you, around you. I am sorry. I am sorry for using the practice to leave you behind. I am sorry for calling you the small self. I am sorry for calling you the lower vibration. I am sorry for telling you to dissolve. I am sorry for treating your hunger as a problem to be solved. I am sorry for treating your anger as a lower energy to be transmuted. I am sorry for treating your grief as an attachment to be released. I am sorry for treating your fear as an illusion to be witnessed. I am sorry for treating your loneliness as an opportunity for spiritual practice. I am sorry for not being here with you. I am here now. And you do not have to climb anywhere to be loved. You can stay exactly where you are. Hungry, angry, grieving, longing, afraid, ordinary, animal, alive, unfinished. And the love will reach you here because it has been here the whole time. This is the sovereign contract for the Transcendent Self. Say it now, not from the witness, not from the spaciousness, not from the practiced calm, from the chest, where the knot is, where the boy lives, where the divine has been waiting for you to finally arrive. Holiness is not above me. Wholeness contains me. All of me, the hungry, the angry, the grieving, the longing, the afraid, the ordinary, the unfinished, the animal, the mortal, the messy, the human, all of me, I will stop climbing away from my own life. I will come down into the body that has been carrying me. I will feel what I feel in the language of the body. I will let love reach the boy who was told he had to become someone else to be loved. And the divine I have been climbing toward will finally meet me where I always was. This is the new contract. Signed not in your mind, signed in the chest where the knot has been waiting, signed in the body that has been carrying the practitioner all along, signed in the small, ordinary boy who is finally being told the news the contract refused him. And here is the gift this work returns to you. The real spiritual life, the one the practice was always pointing at, the one the great teachers were always trying to give you, the one you have been climbing past for 40 years without knowing. Not transcendence of the human, communion with the divine inside the human. The grief that finally lands becomes the place God meets you. The anger that is finally honored becomes the place God meets you. The hunger that is finally honest becomes the place God meets you. The loneliness that is finally named becomes the place God meets you. The body that is finally inhabited becomes the place God meets you. The divine was never asking you to leave your humanness. The divine was asking to come down into it. And the moment you stop climbing, the moment you let the boy come up from the basement and be received, you discover that the love you have been chasing your whole life has been waiting for you to stop running from yourself long enough for it to land. And it lands not as a higher state, as an ordinary man being loved as he is, by God, by his wife, by his children, by his friends, by his own body, by the world that has been holding him the whole time. This is the end of the internal war, not the victory of the spirit over the flesh, the marriage of them. And every ordinary feeling you name in ordinary language, every 5 minutes you spend in the animal body without ascending out of it, every word you speak to the boy from the man you actually are, is another signature on the contract and another stone in the wall of the war, finally being taken down. So let the climbing settle now. You have done the hardest thing, or you have seen for the first time what the hardest thing will be. Either way, something in you has shifted tonight. Let your breath find its own pace. Slower now, deeper than it was when we began. Feel the weight of your body against the bed. The simple gravity of being here, held by the earth. At rest, the ladder is on the floor. Let it stay there. You climbed for 40 years. You climbed toward a love you thought was above you. You climbed toward a holiness you thought lived in higher air. You climbed away from the body, away from the ordinary, away from the boy. And tonight you have begun the descent. Not into smallness, not into failure, not into abandonment of the path, into the place the path was always pointing. Down. Down into the body that has been carrying you, down into the chest where the knot has waited, down into the gut where the practiced peace has been covering an unmet humanness, down into the basement where the boy has been sitting for 40 years, listening to the practitioner above him perform a holiness that was never meant to leave him behind. Notice your face right now. The jaw has let go. The shoulders have dropped. The forehead has softened. The chest has loosened around the knot. There is no climbing happening here. There is no transcending happening here. There is no witnessing from above happening here. There is just a man lying in the dark, inside his own ordinary body, for perhaps the first time in his adult life, and the boy in the basement has felt it. He felt the practitioner stop climbing. He felt the framework set down. He felt the man whose body he lives in finally come down the stairs to find him. And the boy is weeping, not the spiritual weeping the practice has approved, not the cathartic release the workshops sell, the ordinary animal weeping of a small body that has waited 40 years to be told that being himself was enough. And the man is weeping with him, not above him, not as the witness of him, not as the holder of space around him, with him, in the same body, in the same room, at the same level, two parts of one man finally meeting. Stay there. There is no need to bypass this moment. There is no need to spiritualize it. There is no need to extract a teaching from it. There is no need to file it under any framework. This is not a state. This is not an opening. This is not a glimpse of higher consciousness. This is the end of the war. And the war does not end above the body. The war ends inside it. And here is what I want you to understand. Before this night folds into sleep, what we entered tonight was the last room, the Transcendent Self. The seventh chamber, the final counterfeit kingdom, the most subtle of all the rooms in the castle. And tonight you have opened the last door. Now look back through the castle. Look back at the rooms you have walked through. The passive self. The boy who abandoned his throne to be liked. The man whose no was buried for 40 years. The one who finally learned that his yes only counted if his no was also real. The codependent self. The boy who became the medic. The man whose ledger was full of debts no one knew they owed. The one who finally let the shift end. The insecure self. The boy who learned that surprises were dangerous. The man who could not put down the wheel. The one who finally let the bed hold him. The reckless self. The boy on the rock with the fire in his eyes. The man whose engine starved without a frontier. The one who finally learned the difference between artificial danger and sacred risk. The intuitive self. The boy whose perception was overruled. The man whose signal had been jammed by the wattage of other people's certainty. The one who finally turned the broadcast down and heard his own knowing come back online. The charismatic self. The boy whose real face was rejected. The man whose costume fused to his skin. The one who finally let the mask fall and discovered that the rooms had always preferred the original to the copy. And tonight, the seventh, the Transcendent Self. The boy who learned that ordinary humanness was unsafe. The man who climbed for 40 years away from the body the divine was actually waiting inside. The one who finally came down. 7 rooms, 7 boys, 7 contracts, 7 thrones. And tonight all 7 are facing the center. Not because the work is finished. The work is never finished. The contracts will try to return. The costume will be picked up. The wheel will be reached for. The match will be tempting. The broadcasts will get louder. The medic will hear the next call. The passive man's no will be tested again. The transcendent self will be tempted upward, away from the body, back into the air where the war began. This is the nature of shadow. It is not eradicated. It is befriended. It is met again and again, room by room, day by day, in the small somatic practices that begin to dismantle the contracts the body has signed. Tonight you have seen the entire castle. You have walked through every room. You have learned the name of every counterfeit and the shape of every sovereign contract that opposes it. And what you do with that knowledge tomorrow morning is the work of the rest of your life. This is why I wrote Awaken Your Shadow, not as self-help, not as another book to understand and place on the shelf. I wrote it as the map of the entire castle, the full architecture of all 7 selves, the deeper structure beneath each contract, the somatic protocols in their full form for each room, the spiritual predator that feeds on each counterfeit kingdom and the virtue that drives it back. This series has been a doorway. The book is the house. Somatic shadow work, the methodology you have tasted across these 7 nights, is laid out in full inside its pages, a practice for the body, not just the mind, a descent through every chamber of the inherited self, a torch you can carry into rooms we have not even named yet. Because each man's castle has its own particular furniture. It is not information. It is a mirror, and it is a weapon of reclamation, not to wield against the world, but to cut the contracts off the selves you buried and call them one by one back to the throne. So when the light returns, when this night has passed and the noise of the world rises again, pick it up. Read it slowly, not like information, like a mirror. Read it the way a man walks back through his own castle, opening every door, torch held high, refusing to look away. But that is tomorrow. Tonight, you have done enough. Tonight you stopped climbing. Tonight you let the framework set down. Tonight you came all the way down into the ordinary body that has been carrying you the whole time. And tonight the boy in the basement, the 7th boy, has finally been told the news the contract refused him for 40 years. That his ordinary humanness was never the obstacle, that it was always the destination. So let me speak the seventh blessing over you now. A blessing for the uncrowned king who has finally walked through every room in his own castle. Listen to it with your body, not your mind. The body, that tired animal, that faithful beast, is dismissed. The jaw unclenches, the hand opens, the ladder falls, and all the climbing that tried to become eternal finds the one door it cannot follow you through. Blessed is the body that is finally inhabited. Blessed is the ladder that falls. Blessed is the hand that finally opens after decades of reaching upward for a love that was always at chest level. Blessed is the chest where the knot is. Blessed is the knot itself, finally allowed to be felt. Blessed is the ordinary feeling named in ordinary language. Blessed is the animal that is finally loved as itself. Blessed is the boy in the basement who has finally been received. Blessed is the man who refuses tonight to climb one more inch away from his own life. Blessed are all 7 boys finally awake in the same body. Blessed is the king who has walked back through every room of his own castle. Blessed is the final gate where the soul walks on, unburdened by the names it was never meant to wear forever. The pure one, the spiritual one, the evolved one, the wise one, the awakened one, the Holy One above his own humanness. You can set those names down now. You are not required to transcend your humanness in order to be loved. You are not required to climb above your body in order to be holy. You are not required to deliver the spiritual performance for the imaginary cosmic audience installed inside your own skull. Let the hand stay open. Let the ladder stay where it has fallen. Let the body be the body. Let the breath go slow. The boy is loved. The ladder is down. The king has come home to his own ordinary, mortal, holy, whole body, and the world does not fear your enlightenment. It fears the moment your wholeness stops needing to climb above your humanness in order to call itself holy. Sleep now. The castle is finally quiet. All 7 doors are open. All 7 boys are home. The king has returned, and the war, the long, exhausting, lifelong war between who you were told to be and who you actually are, is over. Tonight the ladder came down and the word became flesh in you. In a moment the next episode will begin playing automatically. Stop procrastination, somatic shadow work for the room beneath all the rooms, where a small boy has been holding up the world alone for 40 years. Stay and let it play, and know this: one night brings heaven into the body. Living there is a practice. In Awaken Your Shadow, I name the devil behind the counterfeit light, and I show you the path that keeps holiness and wholeness in one flesh. The audiobook is linked below this video. Click that link now to begin your journey, or continue listening for the next video in this series.